Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. And we're here today to talk about founder-led sales. And we're with a great friend, Dale Shephard from TrinityHawk. Hey, how are you, Dale?
I'm well, Bill. How are you? Great to see you again.
It's great to see you as well. So founder-led sales, we hear about it. I guess in our experience, most of the companies we see coming into the US, we see them, they prioritize hiring a local or finding a distributor. And what happens? What's the problem with doing that?
Great question. Lots to unpick there. I think the one thing I'm going to start by saying is that very early in this company's formation, when it was a back pocket full of business cards and a head full of dreams, and I was running the circuit and attending events, I made it my business to speak with a few people and get their feedback and their input that I respected. And having worked for US companies for the best part of 12 to 15 years, the US was always meant to be and will be part of my strategy. And I was told very clearly by somebody very well respected in their space that I won't have any business in the US. And if somebody needs someone like me in the US, they'll just find an American. Now, fast forward almost 3 years to the day, we were incorporated on the 4th of August, 23. I've had always at least one live US client at any one point in time. My current one has renewed with me twice, and we'll be working with each other well past a year. And the impact, as I'm honorably and very gratefully told frequently, is very, very tangible. So I think if you want to plant someone on the ground and look locally, of course, that is an option. There are many benefits to doing that in this day and age, although, I do think that post-COVID things have changed in terms of how people operate. I mean, look at you and I, we're not in a podcast studio, we're on a Google Meet. And that's just normal business ways of working. And so much more can be done. And it's allowed me to continue to do that. And ultimately, why have I been successful? It's been experience, domain expertise, and network. And I think there's very much an element of grit and attitude in there as well.
So, so sort of thinking about, the options for expansion in terms of generating revenue, having a local person or hiring a distributor, at least in our experience, and it sounds like in yours as well, the majority of time, that tends to be the first thing companies focus on. And also, at least in what we see, one of the big fail points. And we actually have a client that budgets for bad hires in their sales team. I've
never heard that.
Because he's entered the US a couple times, and instead of doing something different, he just budgets more for bad hires.
Incredible.
And
okay.
So what's the challenge with starting with hiring a local, be it a direct hire or a distributor?
Yeah, I think, and it's the same in the UK, to be really honest, and it's worldwide. So I think, first of all, it depends on the skill set and background of that founder. One of the reasons this business exists is because 9 times out of 10, they don't have that sort of background. They've not worked in a sales commercial sort of role. And again, if it goes bad, and I think that this problem is amplified over here, it's very expensive. Someone I follow on LinkedIn, their newsletter came out today, and the title was $84,000 lost on a wrong hire. I didn't need to scroll down, but I did anyway. It was a salesperson. And I spoke with another founder last December who told me they had 6 sequential bad sales hires. So not a group of 6 that didn't work out. They had one person, didn't work, got rid of them, did that again and again 4 more times. And after I spoke with him a bit more, do you know what the common denominator was as to why they all did not work out? The founder didn't know how to write a comp plan. But to my previous point, why would he? He's never been a salesperson. He doesn't understand what it drives and what it means and how it should be structured. And unfortunately, I've seen that a handful of times this year as well already. I think, to further answer your question, I think that's why founders need to keep the reins for sales a little longer. They spend that time face to face.
Yep.
Again, not immediately knee-jerk to hiring somebody best they can afford. I mean, it's incredible that your contact has got budget for bad hires. Lots of them don't. And often it takes a long time, and again, it's very expensive. Sometimes I work with businesses that their budget only would really stretch to a junior account exec of sorts. But when there's nothing in place from a sales commercial negotiation process, go-to-market RevOps perspective, how are you expecting that person that's got 3 years of sales experience, that's as tenured as you can afford, to go in there and build all of this for the business that you've been spending blood, sweat, and tears upon?
Yeah, I use an analogy quite often, and I'd love your reaction to it. So if I think of a good salesperson like somebody who you hire to drive a car, right? You want to put them in a frictionless environment. You don't want them to be slowed down by red lights. You don't want them to have to go around roundabouts or hit speed bumps or any of that. You want them to, sort of be able to initiate a prospect or find a prospect and take that as quickly as possible, as frictionless as possible, to the point of closure and onboarding.
Right.
And so if that's the notion, if that's kind of the goal, if you hire somebody before or too early, you've sort of brought somebody in to drive a car, but they need to build the road and they need to build the car. And that's a different person,
Exactly.
a different role. But is that kind of
No, I love that analogy. And I think I posted about this exact topic a couple of weeks back on LinkedIn, and what somebody came on top of and commented was that it doesn't accelerate, to keep in the pun in your pun there, but it amplifies the problems.
Yeah.
So in your example, there's no roads, no street signs, there's no road markings. What's going to happen? Crash after crash after crash after crash.
There's likely no road, right? It's a dirt path, because you're that first sale in any new market is hard. I mean, sales are hard anyway, but the first sale, you take a lot of arrows, you fall in a lot of holes, you learn a lot. So that kind of transition us to, what does the founder have? What pixie dust does the founder have that some foreigner doesn't have? And so, and I guess I'd take this in two parts, sort of, what do they have? So they have legacy information, right? They have they know what's worked in the UK or in Europe or in Asia, and they can apply that.
Right.
I guess take us forward on that.
Indeed. I think I don't want to underestimate kind of passion. In all my interactions, I think having a passion and believing in the problem that you're solving, and that tangibly coming across to somebody else, is incredibly important. If you've just hired someone, or they're on part-time, or you've got a BDR they're not going to have the passion and the understanding of the product, let alone the magnitude of the pain that product is solving, because they haven't lived it, simply. And that comes to my second bit, is that credibility. And it's something that I've fortunately kind of ridden quite well in my career, that has enabled me to be quite successful. I've spent a lot of time in places where I've lived what I'm selling, and I can very cleanly, clearly, and truthfully and honestly articulate that back to somebody and say, and make sure that they know that I understand those pain principles. Teaching somebody what you've been through for the last 15, 20 years is super hard to do.
Yeah.
At the least.
Yeah. So, I love that. And so to me, there's one other part of this, which, I think that is just sort of how do we close sales, right? But as you know, like that famous American poet, Mike Tyson, said, everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. And right, you go into a new market, you've got a plan, but then the customer teaches you, right? Every conversation teaches you, which means you have to have some agility, which means, you're probably going to be some tweaks to the offering, the product or service, and there are going to be some tweaks to the communication, the website and the marketing collateral and how you present the product or the proposal. And I guess what we've seen is that if some foreigner is coming back to the corporate headquarters with these learnings, it's a lot. And again, that could be a new hire, an American, or it could be a distributor. there's so much, it moves so much slower, if at all, than if the founder or a founder comes back and both they have the trust and the accountability to make the changes, right? But do you see this as well, where that the agility is much stronger in terms of adjusting tactics?
100%.
Yeah.
I've got a very relevant example. It was before this company and I was employed, but I was part of a bit of a beachhead for a US organization that came over here. Nobody knew who we were. Very well established organization from a reputation and a book of business in the US. I think one US person came over and helped. That was the line of continuity. And there was an office with 6 of us. Now, we had great domain expertise, but nobody knew who we were. We had no brand equity whatsoever. And we came with a very specific mandate that we tweaked, let's say, and didn't ask for permission per se. But again, there were so many assumptions, to your point, that, well, this will just transfer, or we'll just work, or the US team over there that's 6 hours behind, they'll deal with this. And actually, there was a very particular area of the business and work stream that I said, this is 100% not going to work, so I'm going to do it. And we just flew and became the partner of choice. We had an incredible team. I'm by no means taking the credit for this, because we had, I think, enough leash, both from a political, time zone and distance perspective, to be, we're on the ground here. This is what needs to get done. And we were given that autonomy to go out and find out whatever that needs to be. Now, fortunately, we were in sales, so numbers kind of spoke for us. Right. And if we're winning business, no one's really going to complain too much. But it was also my job to make sure that the delivery side, to your point, that onboarding piece, didn't fall over either, and that both were working harmoniously. Yeah,
that's awesome. No, it makes so much sense. And you know, before we run out of time here, I want to make sure that our audience knows what you do. What does TrinityHawk do to help companies as they expand into the US?
No, thank you. So yeah, whether it's expansion from the UK to the US, or in the opposite direction, or from the UK into Europe, we help them on all sides of the coin when it comes to commercial, RevOps, sales, and go-to-market. I think there's always going to be a point, and I've seen this naturally across the last 3 years, where the founder needs help, depending on what they're trying to do, whether it is that expansion piece and they need somebody else in the room with them to help them get the job done, understand what they need to understand, articulate that message back to the UK in this example, or has even maybe had experience in working transatlantically, but doing so with that very astute commercial lens. It's incredibly varied. There's a whole amount of value that we give our clients, and we absolutely love working with them. And yeah, we're pushing further into the US as well this year. Again, we've had US clients from day one, but we have our LLC and we're ready to go.
That's awesome. Well, Dale, it's been so kind of you to take the time on this topic today. Is it okay if people have additional questions, if we share your contact details below and they can reach out?
Great. Of course. Thank you, Bill.
That's
my
awesome.
pleasure there.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. See you soon.